Maya hadn't eaten anything in 2 whole days. Her stomach had stopped growling hours ago, which somehow felt worse than the hunger pangs. At least when your stomach growls, you know you're still fighting. When it goes quiet, that's when you start to worry. She pulled her jacket tighter around her thin frame. It was way too big for her. Donated from some shelter 3 cities back. She couldn't even remember which one anymore. They all blurred together after a while. The November wind cut through the fabric like it wasn't even there, and Maya shivered as she walked down Fifth Avenue, not really knowing where she was going. Just walking. Just surviving. That's what she'd been doing for the past year. Just surviving one cold day at a time. She was 17 years old, but most days she felt ancient. Funny how sleeping on cardboard and skipping meals can do that to you. Make you feel like you've lived 100 years when you've barely started living at all. That's when she heard it. Music. Piano music. Floating out from somewhere nearby. Maya stopped dead in her tracks, her heart doing this weird jump in her chest. She knew that sound. God, she knew that sound better than she knew her own heartbeat. Her feet moved before her brain could catch up, following the melody like she was under some kind of spell. She'd always been like that with music. Her mom used to say it was in her blood. That music called to her the way the ocean calls to fish. Maya's eyes stung at the memory, but she blinked the tears away. She'd learned not to cry in public. It made people uncomfortable, and uncomfortable people don't help you. The music led her to this massive building with glass doors and marble steps. A concert hall. Of course it was. Through the glass, Maya could see it. A piano. Not just any piano, but one of those big grand pianos that look like they cost more than most people's houses. It sat on a stage under these incredible chandeliers that sparkled like stars. And Maya felt her chest tighten with longing so strong it hurt worse than hunger. There was a security guard by the door, but he was busy looking at his phone, scrolling through something that had his full attention. Maya knew she shouldn't. She knew this was a bad idea. But her feet were already moving, and before she could think twice, she slipped through the door when he wasn't looking. The inside of the concert hall smelled like wood polish and expensive perfume. Maya's sneakers, held together with duct tape and prayers, didn't make a sound on the soft carpet. She felt like she'd walked into another world. A world where people didn't worry about where their next meal was coming from or where they'd sleep that night. The rehearsal was winding down. A few musicians were packing up their instruments, chatting with each other about weekend plans and dinner reservations. Normal people things. Things Maya used to do. Back when she had a normal life. Back when her mom was still alive. She walked toward the stage slowly, barely breathing, like if she made too much noise, this dream would shatter and she'd wake up back on the street. The piano got bigger with each step, more beautiful, more impossible. When she finally stood in front of it, she could see her reflection in the polished black surface. She looked like a ghost. Pale, hollow-eyed, her dark hair hanging limp around her face. When had she become this person? When had she turned into someone she didn't recognize? Maya lifted one hand, letting it hover over the keys without touching them. She remembered her mother's hands doing the same thing. Remembered the way her mom's fingers would dance across the keyboard like they were having a conversation with the music itself. Her mom used to tell her that music wasn't just notes on a page. It was the language of the soul, she'd say. It was how you told the world who you really were, when words weren't enough. Maya's throat closed up. It had been so long since she'd played, so long since she'd felt like herself. After her mom died, after the money ran out, after the apartment was gone and Maya found herself on the streets, she'd thought she'd never touch a piano again. And for months she was okay with that. Or at least she told herself she was okay with it. Because if she let herself want it, if she let herself remember what it felt like to play, the loss would destroy her. But standing here now, with this beautiful instrument right in front of her, all those carefully built walls came crashing down. She wanted to play so badly her hands were shaking. Not just from hunger or cold, but from pure, desperate need. Music isn't something you do, baby. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory, as clear as if she was standing right there. It's something you are. It's in your bones, in your breath. You can't run from it any more than you can run from your own shadow. Maya's mom had been a concert pianist back in Shanghai before everything went wrong. Before the car accident that damaged her hands and ended her career. Before they came to America chasing expensive medical treatments that ate through their savings like fire through paper. Before the cancer came and took her away, leaving Maya alone in a country that suddenly felt enormous and hostile and cold. 3 years. That's how long it had been since they'd left China, full of hope and determination. 1 year since her mom had died, leaving Maya with nothing but memories and a gift for music that seemed useless when you were trying to figure out where to find your next meal. Maya closed her eyes, letting her hand drop back to her side. She shouldn't be here. This place wasn't for people like her. These instruments weren't meant for homeless girls who smelled like the street and hadn't showered in a week. She should go before someone noticed her and called security, before someone looked at her with that mixture of pity and disgust that she'd gotten used to seeing on people's faces. But her feet wouldn't move. She stood there frozen in front of the piano, caught between who she used to be and who she'd become. Caught between the memory of her mother's teachings and the harsh reality of her current life. The instrument seemed to glow under the stage lights, and Maya felt tears building up behind her eyes. Just one song, she thought. If she could just play one song, maybe she could remember what it felt like to be human, to be more than just a hungry, tired body moving through the world trying not to be noticed. Maybe just for a few minutes she could be Maya Chen again, not the homeless girl everyone looked through like she was invisible, but the daughter of Lin Chen, the girl who'd been born with music in her soul. She reached out again, her fingertips barely brushing the edge of the piano. The surface was cool and smooth, and just that small touch sent electricity through her entire body. That's when she heard the voice behind her, sharp and cutting like a knife. "Hey, what do you think you're doing here?" Maya's heart dropped into her stomach. She turned around slowly, knowing that whatever came next, her moment of peace was over. The real world had found her again, just like it always did. Maya turned around slowly, her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. 3 teenagers stood there, probably around her age, maybe a year or 2 older. They looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. The kind of magazine Maya used to flip through in bookstores before the employees would shoo her away for not buying anything. The girl in front had perfectly styled blonde hair that probably cost more to maintain than Maya had seen in 6 months. Her clothes screamed money, not just regular money, but the kind of wealth that doesn't even think about prices. Behind her stood 2 guys, both carrying instrument cases that looked brand new, with these fancy Academy logos stamped on them in gold. "I asked you a question," the blonde girl said, her voice dripping with the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about anything. "What are you doing here?" Maya's mouth went dry. She tried to speak, but the words got stuck somewhere in her throat. Finally, she managed to whisper, "I just wanted to hear the piano." The blonde girl's eyes traveled up and down Maya's body, taking in every detail. The oversized jacket, the jeans with holes that weren't the fashionable kind, the sneakers that were literally falling apart. Her face twisted into something between amusement and disgust, and she let out this laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Hear it?" She repeated like Maya had just said the most ridiculous thing in the world. "You look like you can barely afford to hear music on a phone, let alone in a place like this." One of the guys snorted. He had this smug expression that Maya instantly hated. "Yeah, did you get lost on your way to the soup kitchen or something?" The other one elbowed him, but he was grinning too. "Dude, maybe she wants to play." He said it like it was the funniest joke he'd ever made. "Do you even know what a piano is, street rat?" That word hit Maya like a slap. Street rat? She'd heard it before. Shouted at her by people who thought homelessness was something you caught like a cold. Like it was her fault. Like she'd chosen this life. Her face burned with shame and anger, but she forced herself to stand up straighter. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her crumble. "I know what it is," she said quietly. "Oh, she knows what it is," the blonde mocked, turning to her friends with exaggerated shock. "Did everyone hear that? She knows what a piano is." The 3 of them laughed, and Maya felt something inside her chest crack a little more. The blonde stepped closer, and Maya could smell her perfume. Something expensive and floral that probably had a French name. "Let me explain something to you," she said, her voice dropping to this cruel whisper. "These pianos are worth more money than you'll make in your entire lifetime. You probably can't even read music. What are you even doing in here? Did security let you in, or did you sneak past when they weren't looking?" Maya didn't answer. She'd learned that sometimes silence was safer than words. "I bet she's here to steal something," one of the guys said, and suddenly the mood shifted from mocking to something darker. "We should call security. People like her, they come into nice places and take things that don't belong to them." "I'm not here to steal anything," Maya said, her voice stronger now despite the fear crawling up her spine. "I just wanted to see the piano." "Sure you did." the blonde said. She pulled out her phone like she was about to call someone. You know what? I think we need to report this. My dad donates a lot of money to this concert hall. He wouldn't be happy to know that random homeless people are just wandering around, touching expensive instruments with their dirty hands. Maya looked down at her hands. They weren't dirty. She'd washed them in a public bathroom that morning, scrubbing them with that harsh pink soap until they were red, but she knew what the girl meant. In their eyes, everything about Maya was dirty, tainted, less than. Before the situation could get worse, an older woman appeared, walking briskly toward them with a frown on her face. She wore a name tag that said, Mrs. Patterson, Rehearsal Coordinator. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she had reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. What's going on here? She asked, her eyes immediately landing on Maya. Maya could see the calculation happening in the woman's mind. The quick assessment of her appearance, the instant judgment. This homeless girl wandered in, the blonde said, her voice suddenly sweet and concerned, like she actually cared about anything other than causing trouble. We're worried about the instruments, Mrs. Patterson. What if she damages something? My father would be devastated if anything happened to the concert hall. You know how much he values this place. Mrs. Patterson's expression shifted to one of professional politeness, but Maya could see the discomfort underneath. The woman didn't want to deal with this. She wanted Maya to simply disappear so everything could go back to normal. I see, Mrs. Patterson said slowly. She looked at Maya, and there was pity there, but also suspicion. That combination Maya had seen so many times before. People felt sorry for her situation, but they also didn't trust her. Like poverty was contagious or like being homeless automatically made you a criminal. I'm sorry, dear, but this is a private facility. We can't have unauthorized people wandering around. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Maya nodded, her throat tight. Of course. She'd been stupid to think she could have this moment. Stupid to think she could stand in front of a piano, even for a few minutes, without someone telling her she didn't belong. She turned to go, her eyes burning with unshed tears. She wouldn't cry in front of these people. She wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Wait. The voice came from the wings of the stage, and it stopped everyone cold. It was deep and heavily accented, carrying the kind of authority that made people automatically stand up straighter. Maya turned back to see an elderly man stepping into view. He was tall, probably in his 70s, with silver hair swept back from a face that had seen a lot of life. He wore an expensive suit, but not in the showy way. More like someone who'd been wearing expensive suits for so long he didn't even think about it anymore. His eyes were sharp and intelligent, missing nothing. The three students suddenly looked nervous. Even Mrs. Patterson seemed to shrink a little. Master Petrov, the blonde said, her voice going up an octave. We were just... He held up one hand, silencing her instantly. Maya had no idea who this man was, but clearly everyone else did. He moved with the grace of someone who'd spent their life on stage, and when he spoke, people listened. The girl wishes to play? He asked, his eyes fixed on Maya, not looking at her clothes or her messy hair, but into her eyes. Actually seeing her, nobody spoke for a second. Then the blonde found her voice. She's nobody, Master Petrov. Just someone who wandered in from the street. She probably doesn't even know how to... I did not ask who she is, he interrupted, his voice calm but firm. I asked if she wishes to play. He looked at Maya again, waiting. Maya's heart was racing. Her hands were shaking. Her knees felt weak. But when she opened her mouth, the words came out clear and true. Yes, sir. More than anything in the world. The three students looked at each other in disbelief. One of the guys actually laughed. Master Petrov, you can't be serious. She probably doesn't even know where middle C is. She'll damage the instrument, the blonde added quickly. Those pianos are irreplaceable. You can't just let anyone touch them. Master Petrov's expression didn't change. If she damages the instrument, I will pay for repairs myself. He gestured toward the piano bench. Sit, child. Maya couldn't believe what was happening. Her legs felt like they might give out as she climbed the 3 steps to the stage. The piano seemed even more beautiful up close, the keys gleaming under the lights. She sat down on the bench, her hands hovering over the keyboard. They were shaking so badly she wasn't sure she could control them. What will you play? Master Petrov asked, moving closer to the piano. Maya closed her eyes. She knew exactly what she wanted to play. The piece her mother had taught her when she was 12. The piece that had made her mother cry the first time Maya played it all the way through without mistakes. Rachmaninoff, she said softly. Prelude in C-sharp minor. For a second there was absolute silence. Then the room exploded with laughter. She's insane, one of the guys said, actually doubled over laughing. She doesn't even know what she's saying. That's one of the hardest pieces in existence, the blonde added, shaking her head like Maya was the most pathetic thing she'd ever seen. She probably heard the name somewhere and thought it sounded impressive. Master Petrov, this is embarrassing. Can we please just— But Master Petrov wasn't laughing. His expression had changed completely. His eyes had gone wide and he stepped even closer to the piano, staring at Maya like he was seeing her for the first time. Show me, he said quietly. Maya took a deep breath. Her hands were still shaking, but as she placed them on the keys, something inside her went completely still. This was what she'd been born to do. This was who she really was, underneath all the pain and hunger and fear. She pressed down on the first chord, and the world fell away. The first 3 notes rang out into the concert hall, deep and dark and powerful. The laughter died like someone had flipped a switch. Maya didn't hear it stop, though. She didn't hear anything except the music. Her fingers knew exactly where to go. They remembered every single note, every chord, every impossible leap across the keyboard. It had been over a year since she'd touched a piano, but her hands hadn't forgotten. Muscle memory is a strange thing. You can lose everything, your home, your family, your sense of who you are, but your body remembers. Your fingers remember. The opening was ominous, like a storm building on the horizon. Heavy chords that required serious strength to play properly. Maya's thin arms shouldn't have been able to produce that kind of sound, but they did. She'd been practicing this piece since she was 12 years old, back when her mother was still alive, back when they had their tiny apartment with the upright piano squeezed into the corner of the living room. She could almost feel her mother standing beside her now, the way she used to during lessons. Don't just hit the keys, baby. Make them sing. Every note has a voice. Listen to what it's trying to tell you. Maya's hands flew across the keyboard. The piece demanded everything from her. It required you to play some notes louder than others even when they were part of the same chord, creating this effect where certain notes seemed to float above the rest. It took most pianists years to master that technique. Maya had learned it from her mother, who had learned it from her teacher, passed down like a family secret. The middle section came, faster now, more urgent. Her left hand played this repeating pattern while her right hand sang out the melody on top. Her wrists were loose, her fingers curved just right, exactly the way her mother had taught her. Not too stiff, not too relaxed. Finding that perfect balance where technique and emotion became the same thing. Tears started rolling down Maya's face, but she didn't stop playing. She couldn't have stopped if she wanted to. Every note carried something she couldn't put into words. The grief of losing her mother, the shame of being hungry and homeless, the fear of sleeping on the streets, the loneliness that ate at her every single day, but also something else, something bigger, hope, survival, the stubborn refusal to let the world break her completely. This was what her mother had meant about music being the language of the soul. Because right now Maya was telling her story through Rachmaninoff's notes, and it was more honest than anything she could have said with words. The piece built to this massive climax. Chords crashing like waves, her whole body swaying with the music. She was barely aware of the physical world anymore. Didn't feel the hunger or the exhaustion or the cold that had been her constant companion for months. She was just music, pure music, the way she used to be before everything fell apart. In the concert hall, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The 3 students who had been laughing moments ago stood frozen, their faces pale with shock. Mrs. Patterson had one hand pressed to her chest, her mouth open. The few other musicians who had been packing up their instruments had stopped mid-motion, instruments hanging forgotten in their hands. And Master Petrov. He stood closest to the piano, and if anyone had been watching him, they would have seen tears streaming down his weathered face. His hands were shaking. Maya played the final section, the music gradually becoming softer, more introspective, like the storm was passing and leaving this strange peace in its wake. Her fingers moved through the closing phrases with a gentleness that seemed impossible after the power of what had come before. The last chord hung in the air, resonating through the concert hall, and then slowly faded into silence. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Maya kept her hands on the keys, her shoulders shaking as she cried. She hadn't realized how much she'd needed this, how much of herself she'd lost when she stopped playing. It felt like finding a piece of her soul she'd thought was gone forever. "Where did you learn to play like this?" Master Petrov's voice was barely a whisper. Maya looked up at him through her tears and saw that he was crying too. This elegant, distinguished man with his silver hair and expensive suit was standing there with tears running down his face. "My mother taught me," Maya said, her voice rough and broken. "She taught me everything." "Your mother?" Master Petrov moved closer, his eyes searching Maya's face like he was looking for something. "What was her name?" "Lin Chen." Maya's throat closed up saying it. She hadn't spoken her mother's name out loud in months. She was a concert pianist in Shanghai before the accident. Master Petrov went completely still. The color drained from his face. "Lin Chen," he repeated slowly. "Lin Chen from Shanghai Conservatory?" Maya nodded, confused. "Yes, she studied there before she started performing." What happened to her?" His voice was urgent now. "Where is she?" "She died." The words came out flat, emotionless, because Maya had learned that was the only way to say them without falling apart completely. "A year ago. Cancer. We came to America 3 years ago for medical treatments after she hurt her hands in a car accident. The treatments for her hands didn't work, and then the cancer came and we ran out of money, and she died, and I had no one, so I've been living on the streets, moving from city to city, shelter to shelter, trying to survive. It all came out in a rush. Words tumbling over each other. Maya hadn't talked about this with anyone, hadn't told her story. People on the streets didn't ask where you came from. They just accepted that you were there, another lost soul trying to make it through another day. "Lin Chen was my student," Master Petrov said, and his voice was shaking now. 25 years ago, I was teaching at Shanghai Conservatory. She was the most talented pianist I had taught in my entire career. When she left to get married and start a family, I lost contact with her. I didn't know she had come to America. I didn't know about the accident. I didn't know." He trailed off, staring at Maya like he was seeing a ghost. The 3 students were watching this exchange with confused expressions, all the smugness gone from their faces. They looked like they wanted to disappear. "She talked about you," Maya said quietly. "She told me about her teacher in Shanghai, the one who taught her that music could save lives. That it wasn't just entertainment or showing off technical skill, that it was about connecting with something deeper, something true." Master Petrov closed his eyes, fresh tears spilling down his cheeks. "She told you that?" "She told me that every day." Maya wiped her own tears away with the back of her hand. "Even when she was dying, even when she couldn't play anymore because of her hands, she made me promise I would keep playing, that I wouldn't let anything stop me from making music." "And yet you stopped," Master Petrov said, opening his eyes and looking at her with such intensity that Maya had to look away. "I didn't have a choice," she whispered. "How am I supposed to play piano when I don't even know where I'm going to sleep at night? When I haven't eaten in 2 days? When every single day is just about surviving until the next one?" The room was so quiet you could have heard a pin drop. The blonde girl was crying now too, her perfect makeup running down her face. One of the guys had his head in his hands. "You have been alone for a year?" Master Petrov asked. "A child alone on the streets for a year?" "I'm 17, Maya said, like that made it better somehow. "I'm almost an adult." "You are a child," he said firmly. "Lin Chen's child. My student's daughter." He took a deep breath, seeming to make a decision. "How long since you have eaten?" Maya's stomach chose that moment to growl loudly, answering for her. She felt her face flush with embarrassment. Master Petrov turned to Mrs. Patterson, who was still standing there in shock. "Call the kitchen. Have them prepare food, a proper meal, not just sandwiches." Then he looked at the 3 students and his expression turned cold. "You 3, you will apologize." The blonde girl stepped forward immediately, mascara streaking her face. "I'm so sorry," she said, and she actually sounded like she meant it. "I'm so sorry. I had no right to treat you that way. I was cruel and judgmental and awful, and I'm so ashamed." The 2 guys nodded frantically, both mumbling apologies that Maya could barely hear over the rushing in her ears. The concert hall was starting to spin. She gripped the edge of the piano bench, trying to steady herself. "When did you last sleep?" Master Petrov was asking, but his voice sounded far away now. "I don't remember," Maya heard herself say. 2 days, 3? She'd pushed herself too far. The performance had taken everything she had left, and there was nothing in reserve. No food to give her energy. No rest to sustain her. Just emptiness. The last thing Maya saw before the darkness took her was Master Petrov rushing forward, his arms reaching out to catch her as she fell. Maya woke up in a bed. An actual bed with clean sheets that smelled like lavender and sunshine. For a few confused seconds, she thought she was dreaming. Or maybe she'd died and this was heaven. That would be nice, actually. Heaven probably had clean sheets and didn't. Smell like garbage and wet. Cardboard. But then she opened her eyes and saw the ceiling. Real. Solid. She turned her head, slowly, and saw walls painted a soft cream color, with actual paintings hanging on them. Not posters or torn magazine pages taped up. Real art in real frames. Heavy curtains framed a window where afternoon sunlight streamed through, making patterns on the hardwood floor. This was someone's home. Someone with money and taste and a life so far removed from hers that it might as well be a different planet. Maya tried to sit up and her whole body protested. Every muscle ached like she'd run a marathon. Her head felt fuzzy and strange, and her mouth tasted like cotton. There was an IV in her arm, she realized with a start. A bag of clear fluid hanging from a portable stand next to the bed. You are awake. Good. She turned toward the voice and saw Master Petrov sitting in an armchair by the window. He looked tired, older than he had in the concert hall. Like the past few hours had aged him. There was a book in his lap, but he wasn't reading it. He'd been watching her sleep. Where am I? Maya's voice came out as a croak. My home. It is attached to the concert hall. He set the book aside and leaned forward. You collapsed. You have not eaten in days. You are severely dehydrated and you are exhausted. The doctor said your body simply gave out. Doctor? Maya looked at the IV again with panic rising in her chest. I can't pay for a doctor. I don't have insurance. I can't stop. His voice was gentle but firm. You will not worry about money. The doctor is my personal physician. He comes to my home. There will be no bills, no insurance forms, nothing for you to worry about. Maya's eyes filled with tears. Again, she was so tired of crying, but she couldn't seem to stop. Why are you helping me? Master Petrov was quiet for a moment, his weathered face thoughtful. Lin Chen saved my life once, he finally said. Not literally, you understand. But she saved me in the way that matters most. I was going through a very dark time. I had lost faith in music, in teaching, in everything I had built my life around. And then this young woman walked into my classroom in Shanghai with fire in her eyes and music in her soul. And she reminded me why any of it mattered. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at something Maya couldn't see. She was special. Not just technically gifted, though she was certainly that. But she understood something that most musicians spend their whole lives trying to learn. That music is not about perfection. It is about truth. About being brave enough to show people who you really are through the notes. She used to say that to me, Maya whispered. That every time I played, I was telling people my story. And today you told your story. He turned back to face her. Do you know what I heard in your playing? I heard Lin Chen. The way she phrased things, the way she made certain notes sing. But I also heard you. Your pain, yes, but also your strength. You have been through things that would destroy most people, and yet you are still here, still fighting. That takes tremendous courage. Maya didn't feel courageous. She felt broken and scared and so very tired. But she didn't say that. Instead, she asked, how long was I asleep? 6 hours. It is evening now. He gestured to a tray on the bedside table that Maya hadn't noticed before. There is food when you are ready. The doctor said to start slowly. Soup, bread, nothing too heavy. Maya looked at the tray and her stomach clenched with hunger so intense it hurt. There was a bowl of soup that was still steaming slightly, a basket of bread that looked homemade, and a glass of what looked like apple juice. Real food, not the scraps she'd been digging out of trash cans or the stale sandwiches from soup kitchens. Go ahead, Master Petrov said, reading her hesitation. Eat. Maya reached for the soup with shaking hands. The first spoonful hit her tongue and she almost cried again. It was chicken soup, rich and salty and perfect. She forced herself to eat slowly, even though every instinct screamed at her to shove it all in her mouth as fast as possible. She'd learned the hard way that eating too fast when you were this hungry just made you sick. Master Petrov sat back down in his chair and watched her eat with an expression that was hard to read. Not pity exactly. Something deeper than that. Understanding, maybe. Or sadness for all the meals she hadn't had. I made some phone calls while you were sleeping, he said after a few minutes. To the academy next door? Maya froze with the spoon halfway to her mouth. The academy, where those 3 students came from, where people like her definitely did not belong. Do not look so frightened, he said with a slight smile. I am on the board of directors. Have been for 20 years. I called the dean, explained your situation, and told him that you are Lin Chen's daughter. That you have more talent in your little finger than most of their students have in their entire bodies. I don't understand, Maya said slowly. You have been accepted to the academy. Full scholarship. Tuition, room and board, meal plan, everything. You will have a dormitory room starting tomorrow. You will study piano performance along with all the other required classes. He paused, letting that sink in. You will never sleep on the street again. Maya's spoon clattered into the bowl. She stared at him, unable to process what he was saying. It was too much. Too impossible. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. I can't, she whispered. I don't deserve it. Deserve? Master Petrov's voice turned sharp. You think you do not deserve an education? A safe place to sleep? The chance to develop your gift? Maya, you are one of the most talented young pianists I have encountered in my 40 years of teaching. Your mother gave up her career to raise you and teach you everything she knew. Do you think she would want you wasting that gift? Living on the streets? Giving up? No, Maya said, her voice breaking. But she's not here, and I don't know how to do this without her. I know. His expression softened. Losing a parent is like losing a limb. You learn to function without it, but you never stop feeling the absence. Your mother was too young to die. You were too young to lose her. None of this is fair. Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I miss her so much. Of course you do. And you will continue to miss her. That does not go away. He leaned forward in his chair. But you honor her memory by continuing. By playing. By becoming the musician she knew you could be. That is what she would want. Maya knew he was right. Her mother had made her promise in those final days in the hospital, when they both knew the end was coming. Promise me you will not give up on music, her mother had whispered, her voice weak from the morphine. Promise me you will keep playing. It is who you are, baby. Do not let the world take that away from you, Maya had promised, and then she'd spent a year breaking that promise because she didn't know how to keep it. What if I'm not good enough? She asked quietly. What if I can't do it? You played Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor after not touching a piano for over a year. After days without food or sleep. And you played it beautifully. Master Petrov shook his head. You are good enough, Maya. You have always been good enough. You just need to believe it. There was a knock at the door, soft and hesitant. Master Petrov stood and opened it. The blonde girl from earlier stood there, her eyes red from crying. She wasn't wearing makeup anymore, and she looked younger without it. More human. Master Petrov, she said quietly. I know you probably don't want to see me, but I had to come. I had to tell her. She looked past him to where Maya was sitting in the bed. I'm so sorry. I've been thinking about what I did all day, and I feel sick. I was horrible to you. I judged you based on how you looked, and I was cruel, and there's no excuse for it. Maya didn't know what to say. Part of her was still angry, but a bigger part was just tired. Tired of being angry. Tired of carrying around all this pain. My name is Claire, the girl continued. I'm a second-year student at the academy, piano performance major, and I just want you to know that if there's anything I can do to help you, anything at all, I will. I want to make this right. You can't make it right, Maya said quietly. You can't give me back the year I spent on the streets. You can't give me back my mother. Claire's face crumpled. I know I can't, but I want to try anyway. Please. Maya looked at Master Petrov, who was watching this exchange with an unreadable expression. Then she looked back at Claire, at this girl who probably had everything handed to her but who seemed genuinely destroyed by what she'd done. Okay, Maya finally said. You can help me. You can show me around the academy. Help me figure out how things work there, because I have no idea what I'm doing and I'm terrified. Claire's face lit up with relief. Yes, absolutely, I'll help you with everything. Your schedule, finding your classes, the best practice rooms, where to get good food in the cafeteria, whatever you need. The practice rooms have pianos? Maya asked, and she hated how her voice sounded. So hopeful, so desperate, so many pianos, Claire said with a small smile. And you can practice whenever you want. All night if you want to. Some students basically live in the practice rooms. Maya tried to imagine it, having access to a piano whenever she wanted. Not having to wonder where she'd sleep or what she'd eat. Just being able to focus on music again, on becoming who she was supposed to be. It seemed impossible. But Master Petrov was looking at her with such certainty, and Claire was looking at her with such hope, and maybe, just maybe, impossible things could happen sometimes. Okay, Maya said again, stronger this time. Okay, I'll do it. And even though she was scared, even though she had no idea what came next for the first time in a year, Maya felt something that she'd almost forgotten existed. She felt hope. 2 years. That's how long it took for Maya to transform her life. Not just transform it, but rebuild it completely from the ground up, like taking a house that had burned down to the foundation and constructing something new and strong in its place. The first few months at the academy were the hardest. Maya had expected the music part to be difficult, but that actually came naturally. What she hadn't expected was how hard it would be to trust that this was real. That she actually had a room with a bed and a door that locked, that there would be food in the cafeteria every single day, that nobody was going to tell her she didn't belong and throw her back out onto the streets. She'd wake up in the middle of the night in a panic, thinking she was back on the sidewalk somewhere, and it would take her several minutes to remember where she was. Safe. She was safe now. Claire kept her promise. She showed Maya everything, introduced her to other students, helped her navigate the complex social world of the academy. At first, Maya thought Claire was just doing it out of guilt, but somewhere along the way they actually became friends. Real friends. The kind who stayed up late talking about music and life and everything in between. The 2 guys who'd been with Claire that day, Daniel and Kevin, apologized too. Multiple times. They felt so bad about what they'd done that they actually started a fundraising campaign at the academy for homeless youth programs. They raised over $50,000 that first year. It didn't change what they'd done, but it meant something that they were trying to do better. Master Petrov became the teacher Maya's mother had been. Not a replacement. Nobody could replace her mom, but someone who understood her gift and knew how to help her grow. He was tough on her. Really tough. He pushed her harder than any of the other students, and at first Maya wondered if she'd done something wrong. "You have more talent than them," he told her one day when she asked about it. "So I expect more from you. Lynchen would expect more from you. Is that fair? Maybe not, but life is not fair, Maya. You of all people know that. What matters is what you do with what you have been given." So Maya worked. God, she worked harder than she'd ever worked at anything. She was usually the first person in the practice rooms in the morning and the last one to leave at night. Her fingers developed calluses. Her back ached from sitting at the piano bench for hours, but she loved it. Every second of it. Because this was who she was supposed to be. This was the life her mother had dreamed for her. The other students stopped seeing her as the homeless girl who'd wandered in off the street. They just saw her as Maya, the girl who could play Liszt like she was born to it, the one who always had coffee stains on her sheet music, the person who would help you figure out a tricky passage at 2 in the morning when you were ready to give up. Maya made friends. Real friends who invited her to dinner and movie nights and study groups. People who cared about her for who she was, not what she'd been through. It was strange at first being part of a community again. She'd gotten so used to being invisible, to moving through the world like a ghost. Learning to be seen again, to matter to people, that took time. She still had hard days. Days when the memories of sleeping rough hit her out of nowhere, and she'd have to lock herself in a practice room and cry. Days when she missed her mother so much it felt like she couldn't breathe. But those days got fewer and further between. The good days started outnumbering the bad ones. And now, 2 years later, Maya stood backstage at the same concert hall where everything had changed. The same stage where she'd collapsed after playing for Master Petrov. Except tonight was different. Tonight was her debut concert. Her official introduction to the classical music world as a serious pianist. She wore a long black dress that Claire had helped her pick out. Her hair was styled, her hands were steady, and in the front row of the sold-out concert hall sat Master Petrov, Claire, Daniel, and Kevin. Her people. Her family in the way that mattered most. The stage manager gave her the signal. It was time. Maya walked out onto the stage and the applause washed over her like a wave. The lights were bright, making it hard to see individual faces in the crowd, but she knew they were there. Hundreds of people who had come to hear her play. She sat down at the piano, the same Steinway grand that she'd stood in front of 2 years ago while 3 students mocked her for being poor and desperate. Master Petrov had wanted to introduce her, to tell her story to the audience, but Maya had asked him not to. She didn't want to be the homeless girl who made good. She didn't want people clapping for her survival story. She wanted them to listen to the music and judge her on that alone, on what she could do, not where she'd come from. He'd agreed, but only on one condition: that she play the same piece that had changed everything, the piece that had revealed who she really was. Maya placed her hands on the keys and closed her eyes for just a moment. She thought about her mother, about all those hours they'd spent together at their small upright piano in Shanghai, and then in their cramped apartment in America. She thought about the lessons her mother had taught her, not just about music, but about life, about being strong, about never giving up even when the world tried to convince you that you weren't worth anything. Music is not about showing off, her mother's voice echoed in her memory. It is about connection, about touching something true in yourself and sharing it with others. When you play, you are saying, "This is who I am, this is what I have felt, this is my truth." And if you are brave enough to be honest, people will hear it. They will feel it. Maya opened her eyes and began to play Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor, the same piece that had saved her life. But this time was different. 2 years ago, she'd played it with desperation, with hunger, with the raw pain of someone who had nothing left to lose. Tonight, she played it with understanding, with depth that came from having survived the worst and come out the other side. She played it for her mother, for Master Petrov, for every person who had ever felt invisible or worthless or forgotten. The music filled the concert hall, powerful and haunting and beautiful. Maya's fingers moved across the keys with absolute confidence now, no shaking, no hesitation. She knew every note, every phrase, every breath of this piece. It was part of her DNA, woven into the fabric of who she was. In the front row, Master Petrov had tears streaming down his face. Again. He was always crying at her performances, and Maya loved him for it. Loved that he wasn't afraid to show emotion, to let music move him the way it was meant to. Claire was crying too, holding Daniel's hand. Kevin had his eyes closed, just listening, letting the music wash over him. They understood now, in a way they hadn't 2 years ago, what music could mean to someone, what it could save. Maya played the final section, the music growing softer, more introspective before those last powerful chords that seemed to shake the very air. She held the final note, letting it ring out into the silence, and then slowly lifted her hands from the keys. For a moment, nobody moved. The audience sat in complete silence, the way they do when they've witnessed something special and they're not quite ready to let it go. Then the applause started. It began as a ripple and built into a roar. People stood up one by one and then all at once until the entire concert hall was on their feet. The sound was deafening, overwhelming, beautiful. Maya stood and bowed, and for the first time in 2 years she let herself feel it. The pride, the accomplishment, the knowledge that she'd done it. She'd survived. She'd kept her promise to her mother. She'd taken her gift and turned it into something that mattered. Master Petrov stood in the front row, applauding harder than anyone, and when their eyes met, he nodded. Just once, a small gesture that said everything. You did it. You honored her memory. You became who you were meant to be. After the concert, Maya stood in the lobby meeting people, shaking hands, accepting congratulations. A reporter from a classical music magazine wanted to interview her. A talent agent wanted to talk about future concerts. A recording studio wanted to discuss a debut album. But the moment Maya would remember most came later, after everyone else had left. She stood alone on the empty stage, the house lights dimmed, looking out at the rows of empty seats. She thought about the girl who had wandered in here 2 years ago, starving and desperate and so completely lost. That girl had thought she was nothing, had believed what people told her, that she didn't belong, that she was worthless. But that girl had been wrong. Maya walked to the piano one more time and sat down. She didn't play anything complicated or impressive. She played a simple melody her mother used to hum while cooking dinner, a Chinese lullaby that Maya had heard 1,000 times as a child. "I did it, Mom," she whispered into the empty hall. "I kept playing, just like you asked me to." The music floated up into the darkness, sweet and simple and true, and for just a moment Maya could have sworn she felt her mother's hand on her shoulder, the way she used to when Maya was small and first learning to play. "That's my girl," She could almost hear her mother say, "That's my beautiful, talented, strong girl." Maya finished the lullaby and stood up. She had an early class tomorrow, and Master Petrov wanted to start working on a new piece. Something challenging that would push her even further. Life kept moving forward, and she was ready to move with it. As she walked off the stage and through the empty concert hall toward the exit, Maya passed the spot where she'd first stood 2 years ago, staring at the piano with hungry eyes. She stopped for just a moment, remembering that desperate, frightened girl. Then she smiled, pushed open the doors, and stepped out into the night. She wasn't hungry anymore. She wasn't lost. She wasn't invisible. She was Maya Chen, concert pianist, and she was finally truly home.